Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Get Your Payroll Done, where we're going to take you through processing payroll in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined today by my colleague Alice, who's standing by in the background, ready and waiting to answer any of your questions. Let's now take a look at what we're going to cover in today's webinar. So we're going to start by looking at some tasks to complete before processing a payroll. So I'll walk you through a checklist and give you some quick demonstrations on things you might need to set up before you process the pay run. We're then going to take a look at the payroll process, start to finish, including how you enter payments, produce pay slips and reports, and how you send a full payment submission or FPS to HMRC to report your payroll information in real time. We'll also briefly cover off your month-end tasks, including the P32 report and the employer payment summary submission. And we'll finish up with looking at some further support, including some upcoming webinars, how to access our help centre, and more. So let's get things started with a look at preparing to process a payroll. And there are 4 key tasks I'd like to highlight at this point. And these are things that you may need to do before you actually come to process payroll for the current period. So your first step would be to add any new starters that have joined you since your last pay run. So you would set up an employee record for them using their P45 or starter checklist. And we actually have a separate webinar on dealing with new starters that you can sign up to from our help centre. Second step is to enter any statutory absences, for example, sickness, maternity, or paternity leave, so that payroll can accurately calculate the statutory payment that's due. Step 3 is to mark any employees who are not currently being paid on hold. So this could be casual staff that don't work each pay period or employees currently on unpaid leave. And step 4 is to check your secure mailbox for the most up-to-date tax code and student loan notices. If you receive those online, you can use the integrated mailbox in Payroll to both view and apply those notices. So I do want to give you a quick look at some of those tasks now. So we'll jump into our first demo. So for today's demo, I will be running a monthly payroll. Now, what I've already done is I've set up a new employee record for an employee that started work in our July pay run. So as part of this, we've entered their starter form details, which was a starter checklist in this case, and their starting details will be included in our FPS automatically, which is why we can see the FPS starter box has been selected. So we've got their start date entered, but one thing to be aware of is that payroll won't automatically adjust their first payment based on that start date. So if you're paying them a fixed salary each period, you may need to do a manual adjustment the first time you pay them if they're not being paid for that full period. So keep that in mind as we'll be making that adjustment when we move into the pay run. Second thing I want to show you are some absence details. So I'm going to select an employee who's actually starting maternity leave in this period. And I've entered their maternity details so that the statutory maternity pay or SMP calculates automatically. And if I want to view those details, I can use this quick link found within the payroll tasks for recording maternity. Now, because this will be the first time I'm paying maternity to this employee, it's taken me straight into the details. But if they're in the middle of a spell of statutory leave, you will see a message pop up asking you if you want to reset the information or just view it. So always make sure you choose the option to view the details if that's what you want to do. So you can see they're going to be working up until the 13th of July. They're then going to start some maternity leave, and the statutory maternity pay will be calculated automatically for them, which does mean that we'll need to make some adjustments to their other payments to accommodate the statutory pay. And we do have separate webinars on all of the main statutory payments, and you can catch recordings of recent sessions on our help centre. Other thing I want to show you is where you could mark an employee on hold. So I've actually got one employee who is starting a period of unpaid leave. So they're not going to be paid at all. So they haven't left the company. So we mark them on hold, which will exclude them from the pay run, but it will also allow us to submit them as an irregularly paid employee in our next submission to HMRC. So if you've got anyone like this, to put them on hold, you would go into the employee record and select the employment tab, and then you can change their status from OK to on hold. And then next time they need to be paid, we would simply change that status from on hold back to OK. And you can see that current status is now reflected in the current status column. The last step was to check for any new tax code or student loan notices in your secure mailbox. So if you receive your notices online, you can actually check them directly in Payroll by going to the e-submissions tasks here in the bottom left corner and selecting IR Secure Mailbox. From here, you can click the New Mail option, which will then connect to your mailbox. And then it will check for any new notices. And if there are any, it will download them so that you can then view them and apply them to your employees. So I haven't got anything new for this pay run, so I can simply close out of this screen. And if you do want to learn more about setting up and using the IR Secure Mailbox, again, we have got a separate webinar this month that'll take you through everything you need to know. So that is my preparation steps complete. Just to recap those 4 steps. Number 1, we added a new starter who joined us since our last pay run. We've entered some absence information so that we can calculate statutory maternity pay. We've marked an employee who's not being paid on hold, and we've checked to see if we have any new tax code or student loan notices. And with all of that complete, we are now ready to move on to the main payroll process itself. So that's what we're going to focus on for most of this webinar, how to process a payroll. And we're actually going to concentrate on 5 key tasks, but I will also explain where other options fit in and around this process. So first thing we will do is set our process date, which will determine the pay date included in your submission to HMRC, as well as the tax period used for all PAYE calculations. We then move on to enter the payments for the current period. So it could be fixed amounts, could be hourly payments, could be additional payments such as bonuses or overtime. We'll take a look at the pay slips and pre-update reports. We would then update the records, which confirms the payroll, it finalizes it and creates a historical entry for that pay date. And then the final step we'll show you is submitting your payroll to HMRC by sending a full payment submission. So we're going to show you all of this in a demonstration. So let's just jump back to payroll now. Now, when running a payroll, you will be using your payroll tasks. So first of all, navigate to the payroll menu here on the left-hand side, and then you'll be able to follow the tasks working from the top and then working your way down. Now, another way you can follow your payroll tasks is by using the process map. So if you want to switch that on, go to the payroll tasks first, then go to the view menu at the top of the screen, come down to change view, and then select process map. When you click onto that, you'll see you've got a map you can follow working left to right. And this will show you all of the possible tasks involved in a pay run and what order to complete them in. So whatever works best for you, you can follow the tasks on the process map here at the bottom of the screen, or the tasks top to bottom in the payroll tasks screen. So first thing we need to do is to set our process date. So when you do this, you would enter the date that the employees receive their pay. So this should be their contractual pay date, or if that pay date happens to land on a non-banking day, you would still report that as the pay date in your submission to HMRC, even if you're going to be making the payment perhaps a few days earlier. Now, in my example, my monthly paid employees are paid on the last day of the month. So I'm going to click on Change Process Date, and I'm going to change the process date to the last day of July, which is the 31st. You can see it displays the tax period and the tax year underneath, and then I would click OK to lock in that date. So that will be reported as the pay date in our submission, and it has picked out the tax period, which in this case is tax month 4. Next thing you need to do is to select the employees who are being paid. So if you have different pay frequencies, you can organize your employee list and filter by pay frequency by using this outline section that you can see just to the left of the employee names. So if I click on this little plus icon, you can see from all employees, I can choose a specific pay frequency, for example, monthly or weekly, if I had any weekly paid employees. But because all of my employees are paid monthly, I can simply select the All Employees folder from here. A useful way of organizing your list if you do more than one separate pay run. Next thing to do is to select the employees. So quick tip, if you want to select them all, click Clear and then Swap. You can see all employees are now highlighted, and I'm now ready to move on and enter my employees' payments. Now, I do just want to point out an optional task before you enter payments. So we do have a reset payments wizard, which allows you to either clear values to 0 or set them to default values before you start your pay run. And this option might be useful to you if you run more of a variable pay run. For example, employees that work different hours each period, and you want to start with all of those hours being reset. So if you wanted to work through the reset payments wizard, you can by selecting reset payments. You would click onto next and always choose the option to selectively reset so that you can control exactly which values are reset. And then on the next page, you can choose which of your payments you want to reset values for, and whether that would be the hours or number value, the rate, or both. So you can choose to set the values either to default values from the employee record, clear them to 0, or retain the existing information from your last pay run. So I just wanted to point out the reset payments wizard for those that might want to use it. If you don't run reset payments, the default position is it's going to just retain the previous period's value, which is fine for me. And I'm now going to move on and enter my employees' payments. So we're going to use the enter payments option, which you can see here in the payroll tasks. And it's also shown in the payroll process map. You might see this pop up asking if you want to check for updates to current legislation. So if I click onto yes, it does a quick check with our legislation update service, and you should find that there are no new legislation updates found. And then this message will pop up if there's someone selected that should not be included in the pay run. So it gives you different reasons why this might be. And the one that applies in this case is that I do have an employee marked on hold. So it's just asking, do we want to have those employees deselected? I can go ahead and click yes. And you can see it's just deselected the employee who isn't currently working for us. That then takes me into the enter payment screen. And this is where you can check or amend any of the payment and deduction values for the current period. So as you can see, it starts with the payments, and this first employee has a fixed monthly salary, which stays the same each month. They also have an overtime payment, which is an hourly payment, which is paid at time and a half. That's actually automatically calculated from their salary because I'm using what's known as a factored payment. So we would type in the number of hours of overtime the employee has worked and multiplied by the hourly rate. And we also have a bonus payment assigned to this employee. So they had a bonus last month, They're not getting one this month, so I'm going to set those values to 0. So you can see any changes that we make here are reflected in the total gross pay. And this summary at the bottom shows you the gross pay, tax and national insurance deducted, and the employee's net pay. Now, other items will be found on the other tabs within Enter Payments. So if there are any voluntary deductions, maybe subscription fees that you deduct, they would appear in the deduction section. You've got attachment of earnings orders on the attachments tab, company loan repayments, if they're repaying a company loan, and then there's a tab to check any statutory sick pay or statutory shared parental pay that's payable in the current period. We've then got a summary tab, which gives you totals for your pre and post-tax payments, as well as any statutory payments here on the left-hand side. And then you've got totals for deductions such as pension contributions, tax and national insurance, and then student and postgraduate loans. So it's a good idea to have a quick look at the summary tab just to make sure everything's looking good here. The information tab gives you all of the information used in the calculations, should you ever want to check that or print any of that information. And there is a notes section where you can record your own internal notes for this pay run, which will then be stored within the employee record history. So once you've checked the payments for the current employee, you would click on to Save/Next at the bottom of the screen. You can then repeat those same steps for the next employee in your list. So I'm just going to go ahead and save the current payments for these employees. I'm just going to stop on employee 4 because this was the employee who's starting her maternity leave this month. Now, because I've already entered the absence details, if I just jump to the summary tab, you'll see that I do have some statutory maternity pay being paid to this employee. And currently, we do have their full monthly salary entered. So because they're on statutory leave, we'll need to make an adjustment to the salary, either manually reducing it to pay them what they're owed in terms of salary for this period, or if we want to make up to their usual salary amount, so statutory pay topped up to full pay, we can enter the full salary here. And on the summary tab, we can use make up basic. So this automatically reduces the value of your basic pay. You can click yes to continue, and you can see the two amounts added together. The total gross pay is now what the employee's usual salary amount is. So I'm just going to work through the rest of these employees. So checking and making any changes to the values. A couple of these are paid hourly. So you can see I enter the hours worked. That's multiplied by an hourly rate. And then for my last employee, this is the employee that's just started working for me. Currently, I do have their full monthly salary entered, but I just need to do a manual calculation to work out what I want to pay them for the days they've worked this month. So you should have your own company policy on how you would do this. And I'm just going to base their pay this month on the number of working days they've actually worked compared to the total number of working days in the month. So instead of giving them this full month salary, I'm going to do an adjustment to the hours or number value. And I want to pay them for 20 days divided by 23 total working days in the month, which has reduced their amount of salary for this month to what I want to pay them. And then next month, when they're getting a full salary, I would restore the hours or number value back to 1. Now, quick tip before I close out of Enter Payments. If you're in the middle of a pay run and you need to check something in the employee record, you don't have to close out and start again. You can quickly access an employee record by clicking on this employee button found above the payments tab. So if I wanted to check something for this employee, so maybe checking their start date, for example, checking if they've got a pension assigned, anything like that, I can jump into the employee record from here. I can then click onto close, which takes me back to the pay run where I left off. So a bit of a tip, if you're in the middle of payroll, you don't need a closeout to access the employee record. Now that's actually the last employee in my list. So once I've saved their payments and click close, you can see that's taken me back to the employee list. The last calculated column is showing my July pay date for those selected employees. And I'm now at the point where I'm ready to produce their pay slips and any required pre-update reports. So before we go into that, I'm just going to recap where we're up to so far in the pay run. So we started by setting the process date. So you would need to set this to the date the employees will receive their pay or their contractual payday if that happens to land on a non-banking day and they're being paid slightly earlier. We then went into the enter payments screen. So before this, you could run the reset payments wizard to clear previous values. Another way of entering hours for hourly payments is using the timesheet entry option. So you can read more about that following the link on the handout. And once you've entered all of the payments for the current period, if you use our pensions module, this is the point at which you would run a pension assessment. And if you want to learn more about pension assessments and the pensions module, we do have some recent webinar recordings of our pensions discovery webinar series. So do check that out on our help center. And a quick reminder of navigating enter payments. So work your way between the tabs to enter hours or number values and rates. You'll see the summary of gross to net at the bottom of the screen, showing the PAYE tax, national insurance, and net pay value. You'd use the save and next option to move on to your next employee in the list. And that top tip, if you do need to jump into an employee record, you can do so from the enter payment screen without losing your place in enter payments. So we're now at the midpoint of our pay run because we've entered the current payments and checked all of the deductions. We're now ready to create our employee pay slips. So pay slips are a legal requirement and must be given to your employees on or before their pay date. And you will find a few different ways of producing pay slips in Sage 50 Payroll. So we have our recommended option, uploading them to Sage HR and providing an online pay slip in a secure portal or a mobile app. You can email pay slips as an attachment, so they can be sent from Outlook, or you can use SMTP settings. Or you can take the traditional route and you can print pay slips either onto plain paper or onto payslip stationery. So I'm going to show you a couple of those options in the demo. There are also some reports that you may want to run for your own records. So I'll pick out a couple of recommended reports in this next demonstration. So let's return to that now. And we'll start with producing our pay slips. So if you are still printing your pay slips, you'll find the pay slip layouts in the pre-update reports. So it's this option here in the payroll tasks, or straight after pension assessment in the process map. Now you'll see favorite reports first. So once you've identified which reports you use commonly, you can add them to your favorites just by clicking on the little star next to the report name. And you'll find all the different options for printing them, either within the doc matrix folder under payslips or the laser folder, which I think these days most people will be using laser or inkjet printers. So I've added this one to my favorites. It prints 2 per A4 sheet. And if I select it and click preview, you'll see that a message has popped up because I'm also using online payslips for some of my employees. So it is asking me, do I want to include these employees in the printed version of the payslip? So that's up to you. You can click yes to get a full set of payslips, or you can click no to only produce payslips for employees who are not set up for online services. So I'm actually going to click yes, so you can see the full set. And then you'll see a payslip preview on screen. And that'll show you all of the current payments split out by pay element. You've got your deductions for tax, national insurance, and pension in this example. Got all of your year-to-date values. Then you've got your employees' take-home pay, so the net pay shown in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, if you are printing them out, something to be aware of is that it won't print the green or the blue background that you see in the preview. So it will only print kind of the numbers and the words, as it's designed to be printed, originally was designed to be printed onto stationery. However, if you do want to print out a copy that includes the background, a quick tip for you would be to export the report and save it as a PDF, and then open the PDF, which will contain all of the background, and then print the payslips from there. So I'm going to do an export now. Just going to drop these onto my desktop. I'm going to give them a name. And then I've got a file that I can then open. I can then print those out directly onto plain paper. So that's where you would find the printed pay slips. You can print them directly from here if you have stationery as well, if you want them to print onto stationery or if you're not bothered about seeing the background. And as well as the pay slips, you have a range of other pre-update reports you could run. I just want to point two out for you, which you'll find in the summary folder, and that is the payment summary part 1 and part 2. So if you select summary and scroll down, you can see there are landscape and portrait versions. So let's have a look at part 1 landscape. I just double click it. That's going to generate a preview. And these are good reports for keeping for your own payroll records, as they do give you a view at a glance of gross to net for each employee. So we can see the total tax and national insurance, employee pension contributions, breakdown of any statutory payments, and then the all-important net pay, so the amount that you need to pay out to your employees. So that would be part 1, which again you can print or export as a PDF. And then you've got payment summary part 2, which is the other one in the set. And this contains a bit more detail on the employer side. That's where you'll see employer NI contributions, employer pension, and also tax codes and NI categories that were used at the time. So as a minimum, we would run payment summary 1 and 2, and you would produce your pay slips. Now, if you've set up online pay slips, you can actually upload these in literally just a few clicks. So when you're ready to upload the pay slips, you would select the option to upload online pay slips. That then gives you a summary of the employees that are set up for this option. You can then choose to publish on a selected date in the future, known as scheduling the pay slips, or you can have them published immediately for your employees to view. So my pay date isn't until the end of the month, so I'm going to choose to publish these pay slips a couple of days before that pay date on the 29th of July. I'm then going to click the Publish Payslips button, and those payslips are then uploaded to Sage HR, ready to be published to the employees on that published date. So as an employer, you will have an admin login to your Sage HR portal, which means you'll be able to view all of your individual employee records. So just to show you what an employee would see when they view their payslips in Sage HR, they're accessing it from a browser. They'll have their own profile. They'll have a payslips and P60s area just here, and they'll see all of their published payslips and P60s. So they can see the key information, and by clicking the 3-dot menu, they can view the full payslip online. And they can choose to download that payslip as a PDF. So they've got all their payslips up to the last pay date. They've also got some P60s available that they can view. And as an admin user, as well as being able to access each employee's profile. You can also go into the main payslips area, and you can see a list of all scheduled and published payslips. So I can actually see those 6 payslips that I have just uploaded that will be published on a couple of days before pay date. So we've got a recording of our webinar for online payslips and P60s that'll tell you how to get this all set up. So those are some payslips and reports. Just to recap what we've seen there. I've got a little animation on this slide that I wanted to show you. So this is the mobile app and what employees would see when you publish a payslip to Sage HR. So they get a push notification, which then takes them into the HR app. They'll be able to view all of the key details within the app itself by scrolling through their payslip. They've also got a download option at the bottom there. So that's where they can save a PDF of the full payslip. So nice little feature there available for your employees if you are using online payslips and P60s. And just to show you those recommended reports, payment summary part 1 and 2, they can be added to your favorites by clicking the star next to the report name. And you can even set up a report selection, which allows you to run multiple reports all at the same time. So do follow the link if you're interested in that. So next up, we're ready to complete our pay run. So our final 2 steps will be to update the records. So this finalizes the pay run and it creates a historical entry in the employee record. You can then, if required, post the nominal link to accounts and then run the leaver wizard to deal with anyone that has left in the current pay period. And then your final step will be to submit to HMRC. So let's complete the demo now. Just jumping back into Payroll. So the next step I'm going to take is to update the records. I'm going to select this from my payroll tasks. You'll see a reminder if you need to print pre-update reports or create CSV files, do this before you update. I'm going to click yes. I've done that. I want to continue. And that then takes you into the update records wizard. Now you are prompted to take your own backup at this point, and we do strongly recommend that you back up regularly, just in case you ever need to recover your data. So do follow that backup option to take a backup now. And when you've done that, you would complete the update records wizard, where it will confirm the pay frequency and number of employees. It'll then list the employees that you've selected. And when you click on to finish, it will then update the records and confirm the number of employees updated, and then remind you that if you have got any levers, to use the lever wizard before you complete your full payment submission. So that has really closed down the period. I won't be able to go in and enter amended payment information unless I restore a backup or use the rollback wizard. And you'll see the last updated column in my employee list is now displaying my 31st of July pay date. Now, I don't have any levers in the current pay run, so I'm going to move straight on to my next step, which is to submit my payroll to HMRC. And we would do this by completing a full payment submission. So you can see it here in my payroll tasks. When I click onto this, because I have an employee who was put on hold this period, it is prompting me to include them in my FPS. And once we do this, it informs HMRC that this employee is irregularly paid. So it's not that they've left, it's just they're not being paid right now. So you would always include them once you've put them on hold in your next FPS, and that's them sorted until the next time they need to be paid. So I would click on to submit. Now you can ignore this warning. This is just because I'm in a training simulation, so you're not going to see that, but it will take you into the full payment submission screen. So you would click on to continue. where it will show you your saved e-submission details, so your government gateway user ID and password, and your company details. You'd click onto Submit, where you'll see a list of employees. It calculates your liability. So this is the total of the tax, national insurance and student loan contributions for this period. And it would also include starter or leaver details for anyone joining or leaving this period. We can see in this submission, we also have an irregularly paid employee who's not currently being paid. So I'm going to click on to Submit. You'll then see a progress bar move across the screen. And once that's received by the gateway, you'll see confirmation the submission has been successful. And you will also see that your last FPS date has updated to match the last updated date. So that confirms that you have sent your submission for that pay date. And that is the pay run complete. And just to go over those last couple of steps with you now. So we've ran update records, and then if required, post the nominal link and run the lever wizard. We've sent our payroll information to HMRC by submitting an FPS. And that must be done on or before pay date. And included in an FPS will be any starter or leaver details, the details of employees that you've paid, taxable payments, and the tax, national insurance, and student and postgraduate loan contributions. And that essentially makes up your liability for that period. So that's what you would do on each and every pay date. But you then have a couple of tasks that you would complete once you get to the end of the tax month. So we're going to finish up today's webinar with a quick look at the month-end checklist. So just 3 things to do at the end of the tax month. Number 1, you'd run your P32 report. So this will calculate and show you how much you need to pay to HMRC by the payment deadline. You would then submit an employer payment summary or EPS if required, and we'll explain when you need to send an EPS and when you don't. And the third thing to do is to make your payment to HMRC. So you might pay by direct debit, you might have a different payment method. Payment deadline is the 22nd of the following month, or the 19th of the month if you pay by check. Now, one important thing to keep in mind is that tax months aren't the same as calendar months. So they start on the 6th day of the month and end on the 5th day of the following month. So always make sure you've completed all pay runs for pay dates within the tax month before you complete these month-end steps. So if you pay monthly, pretty straightforward. If you pay weekly, just be aware that your last weekly pay date might be in the following calendar month. So we mentioned the P32 report, just to show you the information on that report. It's a breakdown of your liability, so tax, student loans and national insurance that you've submitted as part of your FPS. But then any adjustments to your liability, for example, employment allowance you're reclaiming, statutory payments you've recovered, or apprenticeship levy payments that you need to make. And that then calculates the amount you need to pay to HMRC. EPS, the employer payment summary, is only required each month if you're recovering statutory pay, you've suffered CIS deductions, or you're reporting apprenticeship levy, or if you haven't paid anyone in that month and you need to inform HMRC that no payment is due. So I'm going to give you one last demo of some of these month-end tasks before we start to wrap up. So I've completed all of my pay runs for tax month 4. So I've done my monthly pay run, 31st of July. When I'm ready to run the P32 report, the easiest way to do this is from the payroll links. So you'll see there's a direct link to the P32, which I can click from here. And then within the report criteria, I just confirm the tax month I'm running the report for, which is tax month 4. And then I get a report which gives me totals for the tax and national insurance, and then any adjustments to my liability. So I've been claiming employment allowance. I've got some SMP recovered this month, and as such, my total amount due has been reduced, and this is the amount that I need to pay over. Now, because I've had SMP recovered, I also need to do an EPS because HMRC don't know about that recovery amount until I send that. So to submit an EPS, again from the payroll links, I'll find employer payment summary. So we've got a quick link to it here. Alternatively, you can go to e-submissions and you can click employer payment summary. And then with this one, you just complete the wizard to explain why you're sending one. So I'm sending one because I recovered statutory payments. It'll confirm the tax month, and it will then show you the recovery amounts for the tax year to date. So these are always cumulative figures. I can then manually enter CIS deduction suffered where applicable, and it will calculate for you any apprenticeship levy that was due. So I don't have apprenticeship levy in this example. I then complete the wizard, which will take me into the submission. And then I can send my EPS, my employer payment summary, by selecting continue and then submit. I can check the details here and click submit once more to make that submission. And I have now reported that additional information that I'm recovering statutory pay. And that means that HMRC will know why I've reduced my payment when I come to pay them. So that's it done. We've done our P32 report. We've sent an EPS because we recovered statutory pay, and that is payroll done for the rest of that tax month. So that's actually brought us to the end of the demonstrations we're giving you today. I know there's been loads packed into that session, which is why we've provided a lot of handy links throughout the webinar to further support. I'd like to mention some of the other webinars that are coming up this month. Quite a few of them are relevant to what you've seen today as well. So we do have sessions on mastering mistakes, dealing with new starters and setting up the HMRC secure mailbox, processing levers, running the payroll assistant option, and variance reporting. So if you'd like to come to any of those sessions, they're completely free of charge. You just need to sign up at sage.co.uk/webinars. You can also find further support, everything we've talked about today on our help centre at sage.co.uk/help. It's also where you'll find contact details for our support team. So if you do need to get in touch with them, look for the get in touch links, and that will show you the best way of contacting our team. And if you are perhaps new to payroll, or you'd like a bit of expert one-to-one support tailored to your requirements, I'd like to tell you more about our one-to-one remote training service. It gives you greater confidence and accuracy. It is delivered remotely from the convenience of your desk, and we can cover anything that you need help on within your Sage 50 payroll software. So you can see some of the feedback from people that have used the service in the past. And if you would like to discuss a one-to-one training session, please do scan the QR code and complete our online form. And one of our team will get in touch with you in the next 48 hours. Okay, so we're going to keep the webinar open just a little while longer, just in case there are any final questions that you would like to ask. If you'd like a copy of the handouts, don't forget to download those before you leave us today. We will also send you a follow-up email containing a link to the recording of today's session. So look out for that arriving in your inbox this afternoon. And when you do leave us at the webinar today, it'd be great if you could leave us some feedback on our webinar survey. We do read all of your comments and it helps us to improve all of these sessions moving forward. So I'm going to go on to mute just briefly, just to help out with any remaining questions. and I will pop back on just before we're about to close down. So I'll speak to you shortly. Hi again, everyone. Thanks once again for joining us at today's webinar. I think the questions have all been dealt with. So thanks for sending those through. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to complete the survey when you do leave us, I would very much appreciate that. And do look out for your follow-up email that should be arriving in about an hour's time. On behalf of myself and Alice, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on another webinar in the future. It's goodbye for now.